coming to our first Fall 2013 STEM Symposium. For those of you who do not know me, I am Monique Johnson-Jones, the Director of the STEM Initiative here at Huston-Tilloson University. And it is my job really and truly to bring you events such as these to increase your awareness of those opportunities that are available in the STEM field, and for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for those of you who may not know. And this is the first of its kind this fall semester, and I'm hoping to grow the program such as this, and maybe in the spring semester get the math faculty, the chemistry faculty, the physics faculty involved. I want to encourage you all to take notes. I want to encourage you all to ask questions. And most importantly, I just want you to feel comfortable being in here and discussing the STEM topics. Our speaker for today is Dr. Josh Russell, and I was going to introduce him, but he told me he's going to give you a brief introduction of himself. And so without further ado, so he can have all the time that he needs, I'm going to go ahead and ask Dr. Russell to begin his presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's really great to be here, and it's nice to meet all y'all. First, one thing, I'm not Dr. Russell. I'm working towards that. I'm a graduate student. And I'm going to talk about what I'm going through as a graduate student and what it's like and stuff like that. So I think it's an important point that I'm still working towards this. However, you know, I'm will maybe hopefully one day be Dr. Russell. So the title that I had for this is, why is a science PhD a philosophy degree? And I thought it was pretty, the reason why I wanted to see this is I wanted to kind of show y'all, to bridge the two worlds between how you might think of science as a bunch of technical stuff and people looking at equations and stuff, and then philosophy, which people have a very different opinion of, like what it entails to be a philosophy major and stuff like that. So the goal of this speech is, one of the goals is to reconcile these two things and then also give you some information about being a science graduate student. So, I took this from a cartoon. So you can think about this circle here as like human knowledge. And then, so you want to know what a PhD is? PhD is this little bump right here. So what is that? That means that, you know, when you're a kid, you learned all kinds of things, and then you like some things a little better than others. You learned a little more. Then you went to school here, and you learn even more. And then what a PhD is, you go to school a little bit more, and then you focus all your efforts on one little question. But even getting that little question takes up enough time. But in the end, you've extended the amount of information that we know about the world. And so on one hand, you need to keep it in perspective and be humbled by how much more is out there that we don't know, which is most. But at the same time, you know, be happy that we can even contribute this little dot, and it's also a lot of fun. All right, so why am I here? And I want a brief thing about myself. Not that I like to talk about myself, but I thought, since I'm here, you might as well know, like, why am I here? So first of all, I was kind of a non-traditional science student where I went back to school after getting a bachelor's like 10 years prior, because I decided that I wanted to go to graduate school in science. However, all the classes I took prior were more art related, and so I needed to take all the prereqs that would allow me to apply to the program. So I went to Austin Community College, and I enjoyed it there, and I felt like I learned a lot, and I was able to apply that knowledge in graduate school. And then I applied to graduate school, and I decided to go to UT. And so I've been working at my graduate program at UT since 2008. And I have to also mention that you know, that I'm working here, and that I'm also working for the National Science Foundation. Have you all ever heard of the National Science Foundation? So yeah, so I have they awarded me money for several years to do my research, and so they pay for me. So I'm definitely very grateful. And National Science Foundation has a very strong emphasis. It likes interesting research, but it also the strong emphasis on general science awareness and education. And so I've always been very interested in that as well, so I'm glad to be supported by them. So enough of that. So, and also why am I here is because we initiated this science outreach program at the University of Texas. And basically what the title is, Present Your PhD Thesis to a 12-year-old. And it sounds kind of coy or something, but it's actually, I think, encapsulates a fairly deep idea that anybody can understand a PhD thesis. So we had that idea when I presented my PhD thesis to some ninth graders at the Texas School of the Deaf, and they had sign language interpretation. But I saw that the students got excited, they understood the concepts, they asked questions, and then it was kind of like really got me. I'm like, you know, everyone should be able to understand what any PhD thesis, and they should be able to understand why is it worthwhile to even do that PhD thesis, you know. And if you don't, it's not a fault of y'all, it's the fault of the person explaining it. They're unable to explain it clearly. They may not know their subject well enough to explain it clearly. So here's just some examples of what we do. We've been in several middle schools at the Boys and Girls Club, Austin Science Engineering Festival, and you know we have and we have in this picture, you know, several people here already presenting their PhD thesis, and the UT liked this program a lot, and we thought that we could extend it from science, everybody here is in science, to any PhD thesis. And so they're excited to try to see if we can get history and art and different PhDs out in the communities interacting with. So, so what's the point? Yeah, so the point here is that, you know, we exist together in communities. You know, we're not isolated, but we tend to sometimes think about how isolated we are. And so I think a lot of people that are maybe at University of Texas, they're not initially from Austin. They're imported from different places. They may just think about it as going to the university as their own city. But actually, you know, we have this really great community around it. So I think it's beneficial for them to get out into the community and to interact and help people around them. At the same time, the people in the community have a lot to offer UT, and they have a lot to offer in this small case of us presenting these presentations, it is invaluable for them to hear feedback on how you interpret their presentation, because they're so wrapped up in their presentation they don't know if it's good or bad. So it takes somebody from the outside to say, look, and they can ask a certain question and that person would never think of. So the community can benefit the graduate students. We think the graduate students, UT is a great resource. You know, there's 70,000 students there, hundreds of labs, and it's part of Austin. So and very cool research is being done there. And so we stay just up the street, and we wanted to share some of that research with everybody. So everyone knows where the UT football stadium is. It's right there on the highway. It's huge. It's lit up. But a lot of people might not know it's just like 2 blocks from there. You have hundreds of labs in physics, chemistry, neuroscience, cell molecular biology, math, everything. And so it's kind of might be kind of a new idea to think that there's lots of world-class science going on just up the street. UT has the most powerful laser on the planet, you know, and it's 6 stories down below the physics building, and it produces the most energy of any laser. That's just one example of a really, you know, first-rate science that's being done up there. So I want to get right to it. Why is a science PhD a philosophy degree? Does anybody have any? Want to make a guess?
Maybe you're getting behind, like deeper. I mean, yeah, you're studying something on top, but to really understand it, you have to understand the whole concept of it.
exactly. Yeah, you got it. So you like, I like how you said it. You have to understand what's on top, implying superficial in a sense, but what's beneath it are the concepts. So I wasn't expecting somebody to figure it out right away. That was really good. So I was thinking, I was trying to think about how philosophy and science could be together. And at first I thought, well, you got Darwin here, and you have Freud here, and I thought maybe it was cool facial hair, and that was what brought them together. But actually, it is. You're right. It's ideas. So a science PhD, it's about ideas as much as a philosophy PhD, and that's why it is a philosophy PhD. So you're like, wait. Well, an engineering degree is not a PhD. You don't get a PhD. And the reason for that is because your main product is something physical that does something in a defined way that you wanted. Not necessarily, but in science, your final product is publishing a journal article with ideas which extend the ways to look into the world, and ideas which other people can then pick up from and then run with that. The end result is ideas, and philosophy is just a study of ideas. So in science is also a study of ideas. But to study science ideas, you have to learn a lot of technical things. You have to learn a lot of different specialized techniques and information, and it can take time to do that. But that is not science. That's just what you have to do to answer your idea question. You have a simple idea, and then it takes you 4 years of like doing the techniques correctly and doing stuff in order to get an answer to your idea. But when you answer your idea, that's when you finish your thesis. So, PhDs are about ideas. We understand ideas every day. Everybody, we all have ideas. We can all understand different concepts. We all have complex, different scenarios or things that we process every day. We arrive at decisions. There's no way that we can't understand ideas, because this is what's going on all the time. We're receiving information. We get concepts about information. We hold values from what our parents taught us or what our friends showed us. We have goals. We have objectives. What we want to do. We have beliefs in how we want to conduct ourselves and how we want to view things. And then that's all understanding ideas, and then it's arriving at, a scientist would call it a hypothesis. We'll call it a decision, but a hypothesis is if I do this in this certain way, I'm going to get this certain result. And that's what we do when we make a decision. Is like we have a hypothesis that it's going to be really fun if I go out to see this band, or or any kind of decision. So, given that, you should not feel intimidated by any kind of higher education PhD, because you know that it's ideas, and you know already that you can understand ideas. So it's just a question of what ideas you want to think about. So I was saying, you can understand any PhD thesis here, and I was glad to see out there that you had a lot of things up with scientists in their pictures, because I was trying to come up with like 5 or 6 scientists that people might recognize, and then I realized that scientists don't really have that much fame and glory. It was hard to find 5 that I could think of in the last 50 years that people might recognize. But you have the biggest one of all here, Einstein, Stephen Hawking, who is a physicist in England, Carl Sagan. I know that y'all might not know about him, but he has a really he was an astronomer. And he also produced a very influential television show. And do you know who these people are? This is Watson and Crick. Watson and Crick are the people who are credited with discovering the structure of DNA. So the structure of the DNA is what's in all our cells, which tell what the cells how to act. And then over here, you have Dr. Curie. And there's plenty of female scientists out there too. What's that? Marie Curie, yeah. That's Marie Curie. And so she is here at her laboratory. So that's a female scientist. And also I want to show that science is not above acting in strange ways. So you see these two guys here. They got famous for discovering the structure of DNA. However, they never did any experiments to find the structure of DNA. How'd they do that? What it should have been, there's this female scientist here who found the structure of DNA, and the way you find structures of small things is you shoot x-rays at it and see how it diffracts. So she did that. She got this diffraction pattern. Then this guy looked at that diffraction pattern and interpreted for himself that there must be a double helix. And then they ran with it, and then they published it first, and then then he wrote a book and tried to be a celebrity, pretty much just kind of like live on his laurels, which he didn't even do to begin with. And then this guy here, actually this really great scientist, went on to figure out how DNA encodes proteins. But it's just to show you how it's a competition out there in science. So, what is a science PhD? Does anybody know anybody who's getting a science PhD or has gotten one? I mean, y'all. I'm getting a science PhD right now. So I can tell you a little bit about it from what I know. So back again, just to keep everything in perspective, you should never feel special if you have a PhD because you realize this is what you really know. Okay, so what is a science PhD? It's a way for you to think about some new ideas. You focus on a subject that you think is real interesting, and then you are allowed to think about it 24/7 if you want. The science PhD also, you learn the techniques that allow you to test your ideas. So you might spend some time doing technical stuff, learning some equipment, learning some stuff in books to be able to interpret results, stuff like that. And then you eventually come up with an idea that coexists with all previous ideas in science. And so that's kind of cool. When you're finally done, you put it in the big pile with everybody else's and let anybody who's interested look at it. How long does it take to get a science PhD? How many? 4 years?
2.
2 years?
I think people took 10.
10 years? Between 2 and 10? 2 years, definitely not, unfortunately. You actually are taking classes for the first 2 years. For biomedical PhDs, science PhDs, you can expect about 6 if you hustle, and it can extend on longer. If you want to get a PhD in experimental physics, it's going to take a little bit longer because you have to build some machine that's never been built before at a sensitivity that's never been made, and then get results, and that takes time. And why does it take 6 years? I mean, that's pretty long. You take classes for 2, but then even if you're working as hard as you can, you got 4 more years. It's not unheard of to have people go 7 years, but and then you mentioned some people go 10 years. If that happens in cases where if what you're studying is, say, not something you can study in the lab, but studies you have to go somewhere else in the world and observe them, and it only happens at a certain time of year or something like that, then you have to think about all your experiments, go there, hope that you can find your animals or whatever you want to study in the conditions that you can study, and if you don't, then you're just out of luck that year, and then you got to wait till next year. And so I know people that rely on field biology can take a long time because of that. All right. but I'm taking a long time on this. 6 years. So, yeah, 2 years of classes. They put you through different classes, and actually it should be interesting. I just thought this was a funny picture, but that's kind of I think one of the key differences between graduate school classes and maybe some undergraduate school classes. I mean, when you're getting your undergraduate, it's important to get a well-rounded education, but there's going to be some classes that you enjoy more, that feel more like hit home with you than others. You try to do well in them all, but some you might enjoy more. But now, when you go to graduate school, you get to just choose what you enjoy the most, and you're just taking classes on that. So, you should, in theory, enjoy all your classes. Although they're also rigorous in that you have to, you have to be diligent with it. But at least it's stuff that that you think's interesting. It's not pointless. It doesn't just seem like you're learning it for no reason. So, and while you're taking classes, another key and kind of weird thing, unless you, a weird thing that you might not know about, is that you rotate through different labs while you're taking these classes. So have you ever heard about rotations? Okay, so it's kind of like speed dating for scientists. So you say, for instance, in my program, we had they accepted 40 people my year into the program at UT. And then you have a chance to you find out what research interests you the most, you find out which labs do that, then you try to go to that lab, and then then 3 times a year, a lab switches out a brand new person with another person to kind of try them out. So say I started in 2008. First I went to one lab, and this isn't me, and this is I don't know. So you go to one lab, and you're real interested in experimental physics. So you sit here and you're building this machine that's shooting some kind of crazy laser at a diamond or something like that, and so you're learning about that, and you think, well, that seems pretty cool, but actually a lot of the time this isn't ever working. I'm having these issues. Maybe I'm also interested in other things. So the next time I'm going to go and work with this marine biology lab, and then you go and then you talk to a marine biology lab and say, I'd like to join you to try things out. They say sure. Then you can spend some time going around collecting samples, they give you a little project that is capable of being finished in a few months, and you get a feel for what it's like to do that type of research. So some people might like being in the lab looking at physics, some people then might want to be out in the ocean finding crazy looking creatures, but then he's like, I don't know, I'm real interested in worms, so I'll go with another lab, and we'll go in and we'll study these worms. So why did I put that? Well, because that was my final decision. Was I decided to study worms, and the reason why I wanted to. So, and I'm not going to go over my whole thing, but what I'm studying is how worms are sensitive to humidity. So can y'all tell when it's a humid day or if it's a dry day? Mostly humid around here, but have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, I just walk outside.
There's something like, have you ever had that feeling like you went somewhere more dry for a vacation, and then you come back and you walk into outside the airport and you're like, it's humid, and like, what is that? Nobody's published anything about how you even can know that. We don't know what genes, what molecules. So thought we'd use these worms to see if they could sense humidity. Turns out they can. These worms have about 2/3 of the parts that make them up are the same as ours. And we learned about how people taste and smell through learning on these worms. So I thought maybe we could learn how we sense humidity. Turns out that the molecules needed, we also have them in our skin. So it looks like we might have an idea how we sense humidity. So that's my thesis project. So you join a lab. Finally, there's one lab that you like and that likes you, and then you decide to have a forever home, and then you pick a project, and this is what I picked, and then you get this thing called the thesis committee, and this is just a group of scientists that agree to meet with you periodically to see your progress and to offer you advice and see how you're doing. Why do you have a committee? Because the process of getting a PhD thesis is a little more complicated than just getting a good grade on a test. They can't just give you a written test and you make a 93 and then you get a degree, because it involves so many different variables. So what they do is it's more like apprenticeship. So it's more like, you're in the Middle Ages and you want to make shoes. So you go work for a cobbler for several years. And eventually, like, that cobbler and all the cobblers around say, like, this guy makes good shoes, and the experts that people respect say you do a good job. And then you open your own shoe shop later and people know you make good shoes. But you never took a test. You just learned from people how they did it, and then that's the same as in science. You spend about 6 years underneath people that are already proficient, they know their stuff. They train you to get to think like to become a scientist. At some point, they decide that you are, but before that, you need to learn the techniques and concepts necessary to complete your thesis. You can't really know what you're going to need to learn before you start your thesis. And you don't have time to learn everything, so you can't kind of prepare in advance. It's more just an improvisation. Like, okay, now I'm doing this. Now I'm going to learn everything about marine biology, and now I'm going to learn another one is like, okay, well now I'm going to have to learn to program in this computer language and learn these, fluorescent microscopy techniques. It's always specific to the project. And it takes all your time, so you can't learn everything. So like here, if you want to learn how to record from nerve cells and how they send electricity, you have this set up here, which takes a long time to get to work right. And then you have over here, you want to learn about how the DNA in the cells and how you can manipulate it and how you can test ideas with that. But it takes some time. You might have to learn math in a lot of cases. Don't get scared off by this. There's actually a lot of PhDs you can get without having to be like into math. You'll learn what you need to learn, but you don't need to think in equations and stuff like that. So then, after you tested your idea, you have to. This is also a difference from like an undergrad. You take a test and that's it. But here, you have to get it published in a peer-reviewed journal. So that means that no matter how hard you worked, if the question you asked was so uninteresting, or it's not clear what knowledge you gained, then it doesn't count, because other scientists are not going to benefit from it. They're not. It's not helping out the science community. So in this way, like, you're kind of backed up against a corner. You really need to find something that that people really don't know now, and they want to know the answer. And when you show them your ideas, they're excited to publish that there. So it's not simply how long you spend. Then you meet with your thesis committee after that. It might have grown by this point, because you might have to pull in experts from other fields, and then you graduate, and then so I said, but I wanted to just go over briefly. Then okay, so that's the little progression timeline. So what does it take to be accepted by a science PhD program or whatever? What does it involve? What if you wanted to do that? Has anybody thought that might be interesting? I understand that it's that's fine. If later on, if you think that it's interesting, here's what you can I'll let you know that I think the people here in this room have a better chance of getting into a graduate science program than most people that are going to school at UT. And the reason for this is that two of the most important things for getting into a program is your story. And that means, why are you interested in research? How are you as a person? Like, what have you, what are your values? What kinds of things have you had to, for instance, overcoming obstacles? There's actually usually essay questions on what obstacles have you overcome, or what kinds of things have you had problems with, and how did you deal with that? And these kinds of things count really big. It's like if you have to show how much you're interested in research. It's good if you did some research beforehand, and also just I'm sorry. If any of y'all are interested in visiting a lab and seeing what it's like, or conducting some real research at UT, it's possible. If you just we're setting that up right now. So if you come talk to me if you're interested in checking any type of lab out, or you want to do some research. So, but the problem there's a lot of people that apply to graduate school and assume they're going to get in, and they don't, because although they had an easy life and they did okay, but it's clear that they don't really know what they like and who they are and what they're about and stuff. And so that's real important. And so I believe everybody can. It's good to not worry about, not get stressed out about grades so much, or GRE, or all these different things that those things. Yes, you have to do them, but the important things are these, and then recommendations. And if you do any research, you'll get great recommendations. So, you want to go to graduate school, though, how much do you have to pay to go to graduate school in science? If you want to go to medical school, how much do you have to pay? Depends on the program, that's true. I think it averages about $50,000 a year. So, medical students typically graduate with $200,000 to $300,000 of debt. That's what they pay for the privilege of being a doctor. Of course, they also, will then make money, and so they'll pay that off. How much does it cost to go to school if you want to be a lawyer? Has anybody looked into law school? Okay, if law school is not quite as expensive as medical school, but it's pretty expensive. You want to go to law school, you'll be paying a couple $100,000 total in debt. Okay, the difference between law school and medical school, I think, can be summed up in this joke. So, what do you call a doctor who graduated last in his class? Doctor. You have a job. Lawyer, unless you graduate in the top 10% of your class, you really won't have a job. And so the people think that, go be a lawyer and make a lot of money. Yes, some do. But a lot of them get the debt and don't make money. They've squeaked by with some kind of practice, but they're not getting rich. Which brings me back to it. How much do we have to pay if we want to be a scientist? You see all this money here? This is not you paying, this is them giving you money. You make money. You don't pay a penny. They pay you. So that's pretty different. Why would you think that is? Why are they going to pay you to be a scientist and you have to pay to be a lawyer? Well, I think the reason is because graduate students are needed to conduct research. You're an employee in a sense. You can think of the labs as small businesses. They bring in money through winning grants. The way that then they need graduate students to work on the project so they can get results so that they can get more grants. So if they don't have graduate students, they can't conduct research. So you're actually kind of an employee versus if you get a degree in 18th century Germanic literature, you're also working just as hard, but you're not making anyone else money so that you have to pay. In science, you are making someone else money because you're conducting the research. So that's good. You're not going in debt. In fact, you get paid. National Science Foundation pays me $15 an hour, so you're not getting rich, but you're not going broke, and you're not getting in debt. Lastly, why would you want to, so you got a PhD, what can you do what now that you couldn't do before? First off, you can conduct research at universities, like for instance my boss, he has a lab, and he's got like 28 people in his lab, and they're all conducting research for him, and he comes up with ideas, and he gets to find out the answer. So that's one type of scientist. Another type of scientist, you can do research at companies. I did that in the past too, where you work for a pharmaceutical company or biotech. Have you all heard of biotech? So biotech's a company that uses biology technology, sells biology technology, and so it needs scientists to create their technology. It first started in the 80s. So diabetics, they need insulin, right? Y'all heard about that? Okay. So before the 80s, the only way to get enough insulin is to slaughter thousands of pigs and take their insulin and then put it all together. And it was very costly, and the pigs didn't like it. And but then some scientists found out that, hey, you can take the DNA that produces the insulin molecule and put it into a bacteria. Get the bacteria to make this molecule, then later pop open the bacteria, take all get it to make a bunch of it, pop the bacteria, then you just have this molecule. It cost you almost no money, you did it really fast, no pigs were killed, and then they had a business, and then they made a lot of money, and that was the first biotech. And so that's an example, and there's thousands of biotechs. They're mostly on the coasts, but there's some even here in Austin. You can become a patent examiner. So a lot of Einstein was a patent examiner before he actually wrote all his relevant papers while he was a patent examiner. He did it in his spare time. So here you become an expert in the biology that you focused on. And a lot of patents are technology-based, so you then become the expert that looks at these patents to see if this was worthwhile. They're ripping someone else off or stuff like that. And you can actually make really good money doing this. You make pretty decent money in all these things. Manage cool devices. What do I mean by that? For instance, before I started in graduate school, I worked at UT in their core microscopy facility. And so there was people that managed the equipment. $1 million microscopes that can allow you to see 5 nanometers. All kinds of light microscopes, all kinds of equipment. And these people, they love it. This one guy who manages the electron microscope, he gets to take pictures just for fun whenever he wants, And have y'all seen electron microscope pictures? Have you might have seen them, but it allows you to zoom in extra close, to things. And it's pretty amazing what you can see, and it's pretty amazing all the details, what's going on that your eye can't see, but it's still really there, and these microscopes let you see it. Get a PhD, then you can just play with these all day. You can be a science teacher, and it's great. You get to share your enthusiasm for science, and you get to improve people's lives. You can write for science. You can decide. There's lots of you that write popular books about science for people that aren't scientists. There's actually a big demand for that. Journal reviewer. You can go work for one of these publications, and when people send in their theses, you read them and you review it, and you decide if it's worthwhile to publish or not, and that can be a full-time job. And also, you can sell high-tech equipment too. You can make a lot of money. The salesmen that sell the $3 million microscopes and other kinds of things, they're all PhDs that worked in that stuff, and that's how they became familiar with the equipment. And then they decided that they wanted to have the flexibility of sales and also the money of sales, and so it allows them to make a really good living selling equipment. So that's basically it, but I just want to thank you all here at Huston-Tilloson, Dr. Amanda Macio for inviting me, University of Texas, the graduate school, because they support our outreach. We're working with Austin Partners in Education, and